So thanks, Athar, and thanks, Policy Sector and Anil, for inviting me for this. Obviously, the breadth of this discussion and cross section is really interesting and intriguing. I would say that in a situation like this, which has come after 100 years or so, the last similar pandemic was in 1980. First and foremost, whether it is the policy maker or whether other constituent, we have to have the firm belief that this is going to end at some point of time. Now, obviously, when this started, and most of the policy response was designed to believe that there'll be only one cycle of COVID, and this will end in 4 months' time, and everything would be, fine after that. Was to some extent was what is mistake. But whether it is 2 cycles or 3 cycles, unless we don't believe that this is going to end, humanity would survive and would be back to normal. You can't make any policy. And even if you make a policy, the people who have to respond behind that also have to believe that something is going to work. So that's the first one. I'll give you this by an example. As you rightly said, and largely because we focus small and MSME in India and financing to them. In when I turned from a professional to an entrepreneur in July 2018, I raised for a lending institution roughly around 1,000 crore. Everyone said, "Wow, such a great achievement." Uh, but when that happened, it was July, and then the ILFS crisis happened in, I think, September of 19. Everybody told me that, oh, you are lucky that you raised money, but what after this? Because as the world would come to an end. And I, said, that's fine, we'll see how it comes. Yeah, then pandemic came, and obviously after that, everyone said, this could be the worst time to start a lending business. And I said, look, that's fine, but end of the day, if this country has to continue, it has to survive. If there's a sector wherein there are roughly around 6.3 crore MSMEs, which employs 11 crore odd people. And if India has to survive, governments have to survive and they have to get their vote bank. 11 crore people population means roughly around 25 crore of indirect vote population. This is not a sector which is going to end completely. Obviously, this is a volatile period and we have to do something about it. And there was obviously the massive policy support which was coming, and we may argue that there something was sufficient or insufficient, but it was there. And we said we should use that and create something which can help and support. Now, from a lending institution, what becomes difficult, and we were trying to do this when we were seeing complete aversion to give money to any MSME. See, MSME, if you look at MSME credit or lending, reason why there is roughly around $600 billion gap, because lenders don't understand MSME. You go and ask, try lending to a small business, you don't understand their revenue, you don't understand their expenses, you don't understand their non-homogeneous nature, geography, everything. Then how do you lend to them? And that becomes a challenge. Fortunately for us, again, which I call the tripod of data, which is happening now in India, which is GST, banking, and bureau. And if somebody utilizes that, so you can move away. And if you have believed that MSMEs would survive, you can move away from looking from a historical past data to what is happening in current. We created a program, and that was, I think, so May of 2020, which was just mid or probably June of 2020, a program called Sanjeevani. It was named Sanjeevani because we took the aspiration that if Lakshman could be revived in a very hostile situation, we should do something to revive SME. Obviously, our size is relatively very small, in spite of our capital size. But the way we said that, what is the method through which, in the most difficult time, you extend a supporting hand, you provide credit, but we don't get butchered, because as a lending institution, we lend to receive back our money along with the interest. We did two things. One, we started taking from every prospective customer GST and banking data pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. We created an algorithm which analyze automatically that whether the turnover on GST and cash flow on the banking as pandemic recedes, whether it is reviving or not. Because we are a very sector focused lending institution, we focus only on 8 sector and 100 plus sector. We create a mortality rate. What is the mortality rate? Within hospitality, for example, we created a banquet hall has a mortality rate of 10, which means it won't survive. Fast food chain has 1, which means it would grow back. And we applied that mortality rate to the trend of the cash flow which is coming, and basis that we created eligibility and started generating, giving the credit back. Today, actually, that program of Sanjeevani, so in the month of July, we disbursed roughly around 260 odd crore. August would be better. Sanjeevani still continues to be 60 to 70% of that, and with a stellar performance on portfolio. So it's all about having the faith of being able to support. So in a stress scenario, both the government and the corporate sector, especially lending institution, have to be innovative and provide support by that innovation. I continue to believe that India would not achieve its aspiration of being a $5 trillion economy unless the contribution of MSME in India move from current 30 odd percent to 40 odd percent. The employment through MSME doesn't move from 11 crore to 20 odd crore because there are social issues also involved. Large corporate continue to concentrate in big clusters. Small businesses, it goes right up to tier 2, tier 3 town. The recent change in the government policy of retail trade, wholesale trade actually being classified as MSME would change the trajectory of the support which can go to them. It is a massive change which people are not yet realizing. So some of this is coming into fold. I actually, Anil requested me to write an article. I actually wrote on Policy Circle. I wrote an article, I think so, yesterday. I came with this concept of what I call CDGS, which is credit through digitally enhanced guarantee structure. I made an argument. I said, what if think of government? So because small businesses have been hesitant. If you go to and talk to a small business, saying, is GST helpful to you? Invariably, the answer would be no. Because they will say, no, this is very painful, this is not right, and government has been troubling us. But if you incentivize them, because for lending institution, GST and banking is transformative because you can do virtual profiling of a customer. Today, government has a scheme wherein up to 75% of the loan is guaranteed. You change that scheme and you say that every small business which is into GST format and which shows an increasing trend on its GST, it shows increasing trend on its cash flow in the banking, it shows an increasing trend on employability, which you can pick up from the PF data. Government would increase the guarantee from 75% to 100%. Digitization can allow doing that. And if you take the case that even if such guarantee gives you government takes a total loss of, say 5 or 6%, the increase in the revenue for the government just from the GST itself would compensate for that. So if you have a 100% guarantee scheme for small businesses, the amount of liquidity which is there in the market, in the hands of financial institution, would start going dramatically to all the small businesses, and with that capital support, they would start coming back. But for all of it, even for policymaker and the government, they have to believe that a 100% guarantee scheme for MSME won't make the government of India insolvent. It is not possible. But by providing that, you are just unleashing the animal spirit of the economy. So that's, I would say, is the broadly what is required. We are too small to make a real big impact, but we are doing as much as we can. When we talk about small businesses, we really talk about small businesses. In India now, actually, up to 200 crore turnover companies are also considered small businesses. But the universe which we look at are, companies which are sub 5 crore turnover. So they are really small businesses. Our view is that actually facilitation of, because see, these small businesses are led by an entrepreneur whose livelihood is dependent upon it. What we have seen in the 2 cycle of pandemic, that while every time the pandemic hits and there is a lockdown, his ability to pay back drops dramatically. But same way, the V-shaped recovery is also extremely fast. Is because the small business makes that endeavor to survive. And that's the core difference between a mid-corporate and large corporate. Mid-corporate and by intent, mid-corporate and large corporate want to do restructuring, want to do XYZ, want more moratorium, want more money. Small businesses want to survive because they have a livelihood attached to them, right? It's their personal property, it's, sometimes their personal guarantee, their reputation, goodwill. In a country like India, think of a tier 3 town where in a small business running a merchant shop, he just cannot afford to go out of the business because of the social stigma attached to that. And that forces them to survive. So in that scenario, if you have ability to provide, so government of India doesn't have the ability to provide direct balance sheet support, but the liquid, which is what they have been doing, the liquidity available in the market, you provide what I call off balance sheet support. And that's why I said that if you increase, if the government has the feel, they know that it is in their benefit to make sure that this segment of the market has to come out of the pandemic related stress fastest, then they can increase their penetration. They can increase what they can do for it. I think so when I speak to policymakers, and I define policymakers is not the politician, but the people who actually under direction of politician write the policy, right? So in my studio like Banaras, we used to call babus, right? The problem is that yeah, so the problem at that level is that they start getting worried about. So if I remember when emergency credit line was coming up, and somehow I was consulted, and they wanted to again come emergency credit line with a 75% or 85% guarantee scheme. I said it won't work because you are expecting in the mid of pandemic a bank to lend and have a 20 or 20 or 15 or 20% risk associated with them. They have no reason to do it, because if it's a public sector bank, if they end up doing that after 2 years time, somebody would come and penalize them saying why you did that. There must be some other interest of yours. Private sector bank responsible for their shareholders won't do it. And that's why fortunately in emergency credit line, the guarantee scheme went all the way up to 100% and see its impact. So I think so for a period of time, if government come and have the courage, and especially the below the politician, and feel that economically it won't deteriorate government's balance sheet, and provide that support at a full aggregate level, you will see the revival happening much faster.